Thanks for coming in.
Welcome.
Right, so I'd like to welcome Dave Kelly from the Beckenham Neighbourhood Association.
Yeah, all the areas come in, the whole board area.
Morning.
Morning, kia ora. Just like to say, firstly, thanks very much for the chance to come along and just say, you know, in Beckenham, we really appreciate all the efforts council do. You seem to mainly hear from people when they're complaining, but actually there's a lot of good stuff going on. So thank you for that. So you've got the submission, and essentially what I want to do is just sort of emphasise a key point here. We support the move here. During consultation, it changed from the Beckenham Loop being part 30 and part 40. It's now changed to all 30. And in fact, we had tried a couple of years ago to get, it was reduced to 40, and we'd argued during that process about whether it should be 30 or not, and the traffic engineers wouldn't have it. So, and I spelled out in the submission here that we don't have unanimous support for that, and I'm sure you've had this, that people are arguing both ways, but we do have quite clear majority support. And I found the live map that people could comment on, the number of comments we were getting in our area. There'd be sort of 31 in favour of being slower and 5 opposed and so forth. So the one and that's driven really by Beckenham being an area where there's a lot of kids and there's some local schools, and it's really about safe travel to school, and partly because parents are worried about the roads being too busy for kids to walk. Then you get a traffic jam of cars outside Beckenham School and so forth. And Beckenham grows both sides of Tennyson Street, and Tennyson is quite a barrier to getting kids across, and that's been a concern in the Beckenham neighbourhood area as long as, well, for longer than I've been in Beckenham. And that relates to the key point I wanted to make, which is about the difficulty of having a real patchwork of speeds. And I think it's improved through the consultation process, and what's up on the screen now is better. But there's still, I think, it's the treatment of the sort of what you might think of as minor arterial roads, or I think maybe that's exaggerating their traffic roll. But I think in our area, particularly Tennyson Street, but also Summerfield, Selwyn, Strickland, are all still allocated, said to be proposed for 50, but they nearly all have schools on them, and so there are part-time or full-time sort of slower zones outside the school. And so going up Selwyn Street, you'd be going from 30 to 50 to a part-time 30 outside the school, back to 50, back to 30, back to 50, and that's just going up Selwyn from the bottom to the top. And I think that's this concern in our group, our residents, about the difficulty of keeping track of what actually an area is going to be. And so what would I like to suggest here is that maybe in a few areas as an experiment, just sort of do more of a blanket thing and just have people say, this is a suburban area, and actually the whole thing is 30, and you just know there's houses around here and you're not on one of the busy roads. And I think that's a line that you have to draw somewhere, and I think at the moment maybe it's a bit too cautious. And perhaps if you want to try somewhere and just see how it works, you know, for Beckenham, Tennyson Street is proposed to be 50, and a couple of little streets coming off it, and the stuff either side up on Southampton and down into the loop are both for 30. Now that 30 is really going to help with getting kids to school and so on, but if they can't get across Tennyson Street, then they still won't be walking or going on their bikes. And the community board has just, towards the end of last year, approved a plan to put in some slowing things on Tennyson. So I think they're called road pillows at the points where there are crossing points there, and that'll be a help. And it seems sort of mad to say Tennyson should be 50 at the same time was trying to slow the traffic down there. And actually, Tennyson was just dug up for a water main. Another great thing the council's doing. Thank you. Nobody ever says thank you for these things. The water's going to stay on. You know. And so Tennyson was closed, and traffic has sort of got around there. And I think Selwyn and Summerfield as well. Rather than having a patchwork, just slow them down to 30, and I think people get used to it, and it's really relaxing. I'm almost out of time, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, look, Tim, just quickly, yep.
Just with Tennyson Street, because those feeder roads, if you like, you know, for other communities going through ours, what would you think about, say, Tennyson Street and those lights being, say, permanently 40 k's, because it would bring the overall speed down What are your thoughts on that rather than 30?
I think it would be an improvement,
Yep.
but I think the real thing is that the speed it takes to get across town isn't actually determined by that road sign, generally speaking. It's by the intersections and the crossings and the road pillows and the kids there and traffic and so on. And I think actually people are just too busy thinking about all of that to be noticing the road signs. And I think if we could just say, and actually 30, it makes so little difference. Akara, I was astonished how little difference it made to the travel times on the open road, dropping it from 100 to 80. It made a minute 30 difference getting to Akara. And I think
100
that,
Ks, yeah.
and we just need to relax and think it might take another minute and a half to get across town or something, but actually you don't need to be thinking about, there's so much less you need to be thinking about. Kids are safer, there's fewer injuries. I think just
Makes
do
sense.
it.
Well,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Dave.
Cheers.
And if any consolation, you're not the only one saying that. But thanks for coming in. It's really helpful.